You're listening to the Empowering Process podcast with your host, Gail Kraft. Listen as she holds frank discussions around how your purpose, being present, and trusting your power impacts your life. Whether you're an entrepreneur, leader, or developing your vision, you'll find wisdom and insights you can utilize right now. Welcome your host, Gail Kraft.
That's great.
Hey, everybody, Gail Kraft here with the Empowering Process podcast. And today I have with me a dear friend, Jeff Meister. Jeff is also a coach. He's a personal growth and development coach, a writer, a blogger, and for Jeff, coaching is all about helping people just get past when they say, nope, this is too big, too scary, too uncomfortable. He's fueled by behavior, the behavior side of our brains, the why do we do what we do, especially when it's keeping us stuck. So, this is the perfect time for us to have this conversation about what's holding us back. Jeff, welcome to the Empowering Process podcast.
Thank you, Gail. So good to be here. Excited to kick this ball around today.
I know it's going to be so much fun. So, this is a discussion. We both have our personal stories and our own perspective, but we're going to talk about our own ahas first, right? So,
Right.
right, so that people
Right.
understand, we're coaches, but we're not perfect. And I will tell you the first time that I realized I was my own problem, I was in a motivational training program. There was maybe 100 of us in the room, and we did this little exercise.
Mm-hmm.
And the trainer stood up and said, okay, anyone want to share? And I'm like, sure, I'll share. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So what came up for you during this exercise? And what came up for me was I was afraid that I was going to lose friends, that I was going to lose people. And he looked at me and goes, so you have the fear of success.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, no, I don't fear success. I fear. And then I stopped and I went, oh my God, he's right. Because
Mm-hmm.
as I grew, as my business grew, as I grew, the people that are in my life now just won't fit. And so I had to do a lot of work on myself with accepting the fact that some people come into your life for a season and it's okay to let them go. And you were talking yourself about your big aha, which is kind of recent.
Yes. Yes. It was this. When we're talking about the subject of what's holding you back, what did we come up with? A dozen standard reasons? And until the day came that I could say to myself, but more importantly, publicly, I am holding me back. Not Gail, of course not Gail, but not anybody in my life. You know, we can go down the list, but in the end, we are the ones that either take the steps forward or stay in our heads and keep thinking over and over again until everything's just right.
Right.
So
And
I've been
there's
holding me back.
right.
Yeah,
It's the excuses, it's the programming, right?
right.
Um, yeah. Yeah. And then Jeff and I, thank God that we work on ourselves too, because as a coach, we can go in with the scripts, but if we don't have the personal experience, we don't have the grace and the compassion for our clients, right?
Right,
Right.
right.
Let's talk a little. So let's start. I have a list here. We kind of talked about a few things,
Okay.
right? And one of them that we talked about was the fear of failure, needing
I,
to be perfect. So talk about a little bit about that.
yes. And I might, I'll share, this will be the first share on this discovery is that, okay, you may hear fear and you go, that's not me. I don't have a problem with that. What I discovered was that little booger is stealth to me, but I still have that hurdle to get over. So,
The fear of perfection?
fear of perfection, I I'm a recovering perfectionist. I am proud of the quality of work that I do. I'm very careful, and I win sometimes and I fail sometimes to make it just right. But just right isn't perfect anymore. Just right is for the purpose. If I'm making a list of things to remember, just write it down and don't lose it. If I'm publishing a blog, I'm not gonna scribble it out and take a photo of it. But just the same, perfectionism has more than one way to present itself, and
Hmm.
the obvious one is you keep polishing something until it's just the best it can be. But I was reading a book on perfectionism, and it said, "Hey, this is the one nobody talks about. When our perfectionist drives us to whatever we're doing, we have to make sure that everything that's supposed to be in there is in there."
You know, type A, perfectionist, just like you. I started addressing my own perfectionism. I had this job, and I was lead for a program that was being put in a brand new process, blah blah blah. And I was nailing down final screws. If I
Yes.
don't get this system to work here, then there's going to be some manual workarounds, blah blah blah. And my VP comes up to me and she's like, when are you going to finish that project? And I'm like, well, I just need to clean up this and this and this.
Mhm.
And she said, is it 80% done? And I'm like, well, probably 90. She said, good enough to let it go. Do you know we have projects waiting for you?
Mhm.
Right? And so it was like scratching fingernails on a chalkboard to let that go. And I was so apologetic, like, here's the workarounds, not realizing or not giving myself credit for providing, you know, there's so much release in the process with this new program I put in. The workaround is nothing compared to what they're doing now that they won't have to do because I'm putting the program in, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Right. Right. So I learned that. And there was a major project waiting for me, a corporate impact project waiting for me. So I'm like, yeah. So you don't know. With my clients, I will
Mhm.
say you, fear of, I wouldn't say fear of being perfect, but fear of cash flow. That's another one for entrepreneurs and for
Yes.
many people. Um, I'll give you a story, and then I want to hear your thoughts on it. So I had a client. She is a photographer,
Hmm.
and she wanted to raise the bar to better clients, whatever. And I said to her, you need to stop the Groupons because higher level clients don't do Groupons, and Groupon people are there for the saving the buck, and you're not going to get them as a client. It's two things. A year after I worked with her, she was a photographer for Tiffany's.
Okay.
So she had raised the
Wow.
bar, but she was scared. She was scared saying no to
Hmm.
some of the stuff.
Hmm.
And then the following year, New Year's Eve, I saw her and she said, Gail, I have to tell you, I had someone ask me to do a job for them. And it was going to be like a $400 job, but Gail, it was going to be a pain in the ass. And I remember you telling me, if it doesn't feel right, don't, leave the money on the table and walk away.
Yeah.
She said, I had such a hard time, but I left the money on the table. I got a call the following day, and I've got a $1,200 job that would take just as much time, and that's going to be so much fun,
Hmm.
right? And so you leave space for the good stuff to come in,
Right.
right?
Right.
So, what are
Yeah.
some of your experiences, Jeff?
Oh my. Let's see. You know, um, one of the things. This isn't a direct answer to your
That's
question,
okay,
but
doesn't matter.
But one thing I did for a long time, and I have to laugh at myself, is um, you you want there's something you're pretty sure you want to do. All right, you don't know where to start, but your mind starts convincing you, well, you don't know where to start because you're not ready to start. Well, what's going to get me ready? Well, I need to get this thing. All right, it's one thing if you're going to have an online business, yeah, you need to get a computer. But that's about it. You don't need a complete accoutrement of the ultimate uh, setup. In fact, since we're on a podcast, I laugh at the podcasters who have the big fancy booms and their setup looks like a radio studio. And now that's cool. That's fine. That's not big and
I
fancy.
know. At home, I have the big thing, but I didn't start with it. I
Yeah,
started with this.
yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
I knew I'd step on somebody's toes before this session was over. Uh, but I need this or I need that, and I've convinced myself. Years ago, uh, I wanted to go on a camping. A friend of mine discovered that he's into backpacking and stuff, and I thought I wanted to get into backpacking, and he said, "Well, let's go on a trip. I know all these great spots. We'll just go overnight. It'll be good break in for you." And I came up with this idea. I needed new hiking boots. I needed to get this catalog from this company I used to follow that had all this great stuff for great prices. And this was before the internet where you could just go on the online and pick your stuff and have it show up in 2 days.
Hmm.
But I put off going on a backpacking trip because I thought I needed all this stuff. And Tom's going like, "You can borrow any of my stuff. Let's go."
Yeah.
It was
Yeah.
new to
It's
me. I did. Who knows what was holding me back? I didn't want to be stupid in front of Tom
right.
because he was an outdoorsy dude, and I who knows? I always thought I needed all this stuff. So
That's a great one, though. The fear of judgment, Jeff,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
You know, that's a
and
huge one.
Gail, that's what I mean by some of these things are stealth. I, I didn't think you're exactly right. But I hadn't even thought of that. I
Right?
wanted to be good around Tom. I didn't want him to have to teach me stuff.
Right. And
Uh,
he probably would have loved teaching you stuff.
and this is the big thing that in this day and time, we don't know how to suck at anything. Or we fear it so much that we don't admit it's a fear, but it's like, okay, want to try this new thing? Yeah, but it'll be terrible, you
Yes,
know?
but you are terrible until you learn how to do it.
Yes.
And
Yes.
and maybe you don't ever learn how to do it, right?
Yeah.
But you're always terrible. So what? You tried it.
Yeah. Yeah. I When I finally broke through and started writing, I told my wife, I took her into my office and I pointed to where I had all my, fits and starts and everything. And I said, if anything ever happens to me, don't look at this. It's terrible. Because in my head, I was thinking, gee, if I get hit by the proverbial bus and they come in and they see all this stuff and I'm trying to call myself a writer and they read this stuff, oh my God, I'll be embarrassed even though I'll be dead. But it was holding.
An embarrassed ghost. That's great.
Yeah, I didn't want anybody to read the bad stuff, but yeah,
Yeah. And I come up with thoughts and ideas for my blogs, for my books, all of the time.
yeah,
And sometimes, like when I was on the road trip, I'll record my thoughts, right? Because I can't
right,
pull over and write. And sometimes I'll just, put little thoughts down and store it. I do everything electronically now. I don't do paper. And then I'll go back and I'll listen to it and I'll read it and I'll go, oh my God, it's so terrible. What made me think that was a great idea?
yeah,
Right. Um,
yeah,
but then on the other hand, if I spend time to develop that idea, it does turn out pretty good.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
Right.
right, right.
So we are our own worst judge, right?
So let me share this with you.
Okay.
There's this guy named Jason Zook, and I actually haven't, and that's not his real name. He's the guy on the internet who sold his name to a big company for a year. So everything he did was under this company name. So Jason something or another. But he was writing a blog on perfectionism, and he told the story of his ugly stamp because he struggled with the same thing, and he literally made a stamp, the old boom stamp that he would put on stuff, and it says, I know this is ugly, I'm still working on it. And it had this freaky looking bird. So guess what I did? I started to design an ugly stamp, and I got just the right photo, and I was messing around with the right font. In all that time, I was trying to make a perfect ugly stamp. And the irony of that, somehow I just started getting comfortable with my ugly work and didn't worry about it. And
Right.
so it's probably the process of going through trying to make my own ugly stamp.
Make your
And
ugly stamp look beautiful.
yes, yes. How does that work? How does that work? But you know what? It's kind of a cool tool
Yeah.
in that if somebody's really stuck because I can't let go of this, well, call it what it is and move on.
Right. You never know where your breakthrough is going to come from.
Yeah.
I have a dear friend. I met him at a retreat. I've done
Mhm.
so much stuff, Jeff. So I'm at this retreat. We're in Joshua Tree in the middle of the desert,
Oh,
right?
wow.
Yeah.
Nice.
And oh, it was beautiful. It was a great retreat. And one of the exercises was to literally follow in each other's shoes. And I got him as a partner.
Ah,
And I couldn't say anything, and he couldn't say anything. And he needed to follow everything that I was doing.
okay.
And then we needed to reverse it. And he says to this day, he goes, Gail, my breakthrough that weekend happened while following you.
Cool.
He said,
Yeah.
I stepped into who you were and actually had to understand a woman's point of view.
Ooh, good for him. Wow.
Damn, right? So,
Wow.
so when we interact with people, we never know how we're going to impact them,
Right.
right? And we
Right.
never know when that pearl is going to show up. But if we hold back because of judgment, I mean,
Hmm.
I was very uncomfortable doing that, having someone follow me around. It was very spooky, right?
Yeah.
But I did
Yeah.
it, right?
And if they're
Right?
doing it well, they are in your space probably.
Well, they were doing it well, right?
Yeah,
He
that's
was
what I
do
mean. So
yeah,
following you, if
yeah.
I'm
He
really,
he
yeah.
did he really committed to it. Um, and so let's talk a little bit about judgment because I do have a couple of stories for you about that. First of all, folks, if you find yourself judging, understand that your brain has to judge. That's what we do. In order for us to decide what I like and what I don't like, that means I have to judge something.
And that's okay.
And that's okay. That's not being judgmental. That's judging, does this resonate with me or not resonate with me? And that's okay. It's when we take it to the judgmental phase where we are causing harm to someone else because of an opinion that
Mm-hmm.
it becomes judgmental. We do that frequently because it fills a void within us. And again, we started this conversation with accepting responsibility, accepting accountability for our own shit, right? um, that was a huge aha to me. Is not only seeing where I hung around with people who were judgmental, which meant
Mm-hmm.
I must have been.
Yeah.
I didn't like them, so then I didn't like me.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to change me, which resulted in getting different friends. Um, but to this day, when someone judges me, and especially when it's like out on social media, right? It's a stab in my heart, right? Oh, my God. And so I have my knee jerk girl raised in the gutter, girl raised in the gang response. I want to stab you back. That
Yeah.
is my response, but I don't do it. I
Mm-hmm.
stop and say, where are they coming from?
Okay.
So if you find yourself in a position of feeling like you're being judged, because you might be, you might not be, it's how you're feeling, stop and ask two questions. What pain are they in that they have to make this kind of comment?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right? They are in some pain,
Yes.
right? And then what doubt do you have about yourself that you allow this
Ooh.
to this is what I go through,
Yeah.
Jeff, when someone
Yeah.
these are the questions I ask myself. What is it that I doubt about myself that I even allow that energy into my life? And as soon as I do that, it's over.
Mm-hmm.
It's over,
It is.
right?
It is. Yeah. You know what I learned about jealousy?
You
There's one good attribute of jealousy. There may be more. I don't know. The only thing
but
it's
from your
categorically,
perspective, right?
but it's categorically bad to be jealous. But if you find yourself being jealous of somebody who is successful, more successful than you are in a thing that you're pursuing, you need to come around and say, okay, I'm jealous because they're a little farther along than I am. They're, in my own personal self judgment, they're doing better than I am. What can I take away? What can I learn from what they're doing? What is it? Okay, well, Gail, you're doing a podcast. I'm jealous of your podcast because I haven't even gotten there yet. That's
But
just a
Jeff, have you been coaching for 10 years?
no. I haven't.
Okay,
I
there.
have not.
Okay.
And to be honest, podcast isn't on my list. But
And
that's
nor
just
does
a,
it doesn't have to be.
yeah, yeah. And so, as much as I know about behavioral science, every time you and I talk, I get a new perspective, new angle, new thing I didn't know about.
Right, because we all learn from each other,
And I could
always.
wrestle with that, or my pride could say, "How does she know more than I do?"
Because she's gone through more shit. So one of the things that I used to say to my first husband, multiple marriages, guys, right? So I've had multiple failures and many lessons. Uh, um, he was someone who was always envious of what other people had, and we didn't yet. I mean, we were
Yeah.
21, for goodness sakes. So his brother had purchased a home.
Okay.
Him and his wife had a baby, had a home, and he made a comment about how he wanted that. Now, I will tell you that his brother and wife went through some major shit.
Mm-hmm.
They lost a baby. She was pregnant 9 months and lost that baby. He lost finances. He lost a boat sunk on him. I mean, you talk about crap. And I
Yeah.
looked at my husband and I said, I don't want to go through what they went through if that's what it takes to get a house. Are
Ah.
you
Yeah.
kidding me? Let's like do our own journey,
Yeah.
right?
Right. Right. That has nothing to do with getting a house.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Right. We make these judgments without even realizing what pain the other person went through to get to where they are. And that's why I say when someone judges me, um, I had a friend of mine one time say, I got this blast on social media, blast on something that I wrote. And I'm like, whoa, what's that all about? And a friend of mine texted, she goes, this is when you know you made the big time.
That's exactly what
She
I
said,
would have said.
congratulations, Gail.
I knew this guy. I'm not calling him a friend. I was in his workshop. He had this, ongoing membership workshop, and oh, he was devastated by remarks from trolls. He said, "I've never had this before. I try and do all these things, and this is what I get." Da, da, da. It's Mike. You've arrived.
Right,
You should welcome it.
right. Right.
Yeah.
And so everything is a mindset. Everything is
Oh
how
yeah.
do you look at it? So what's holding you back? We all have programming, from the past, you know, um, that we don't even realize that these little voices that were telling us, well, you can't do this yet, you can't do that yet, you're not good enough
Mm-hmm.
for this, or you need to go to school, you need to have a blog, you need to have a website, you need to have a degree. It's all. I need to tell you, Jeff, my we talked earlier, my job, my first leadership job was
Mm-hmm.
at Massachusetts Teachers Association, a very prestigious firm, and they deal with union negotiations and with politicians. I had a high school diploma.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes.
Nice.
Yes.
Nice.
So,
It's
did I go to
that.
college after that? Well, yes, when I found myself arguing with the CFO about what he was doing with our money and realized I needed to have credibility,
Yes,
um,
absolutely.
right? But still, it didn't land me that job, and it never
Mhm.
landed me a job, right? Do I need a website? No, I can do what I do without a website.
Yeah.
In fact,
Oh,
I'm seriously considering canning it,
seriously.
right? Yeah, seriously thinking canning it and just creating a members only site,
Okay.
but
Okay.
not, all of the other stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I do it on LinkedIn and I do it on Facebook. So I have to do it on my website too?
And they can't be the same, otherwise you
Oh, they
get.
are the same. I don't care.
Oh, really?
I
Okay.
don't care.
Good for
I
you.
don't know who they are that said they can't be the same. Right?
Right. Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And so that's another lesson. We're so afraid of being wrong, of
Mm-hmm.
making a mistake and not succeeding,
Mm-hmm.
that we spend a lot of money on training. And and,
Yes.
and I will tell you, here's when I learned my lesson on that. I think I spent that in that 12-month period. This was my second year as a coach,
Mm-hmm.
maybe $8,000
Mm-hmm.
in network marketing training, right?
Yeah.
Marketing training,
Mm-hmm.
specifically LinkedIn training, funnel training. I mean, I had
Been there, done that.
5 coaches,
Wow.
and
Yeah.
I followed to the letter. This is how you set up a campaign. This is what the campaign should say. This is how this should
Mm-hmm.
link. This is right. And I sent it out there
Mm-hmm.
and I got Zippo, Zippo. And my business coach, I was in tears. I mean, all that money, all that time. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
time was the big thing. And he said, I don't understand, Gail. You did what you were supposed to do. And I said, I need to think about this. And I fired all the coaches, except for my personal trainer. I kept him. Um, and I sat down and I did some deep soul searching
Yeah.
and realized I followed your script, which has nothing to do with my heart and my soul and who I am,
Mm-hmm.
right?
So it was not congruent.
It
It
wasn't
did not
congruent.
float the boat.
It wasn't congruent. And so I weigh everything now. If it doesn't feel like me,
Mm-hmm.
thank you for your input. Not going to do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, I might put it on the back burner to look at some other time, but great information. I'm not
Mm-hmm.
going to chase that dragon,
Yeah.
right? And so I work a lot with my clients, as I'm sure you do
Mm-hmm.
as well, in discovering what are your core values, not the values that the church told you should have, or your parents told you should have, or the school told you should have, but your personal core values, because when you know those,
Mm-hmm.
then you
Makes
can
all the
make
difference.
choices that are
Mm-hmm.
your choices, right?
Right. Right.
Right. And so that takes care of some of this fear, um, and that removes some of the barriers of what's holding you back because you know who you are,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So So, what are some of your stories as far as um, discovering yourself, discovering who you are?
Well, this is something a lot of people do know and don't know. Um, 7 years ago, I was in a big corporate job. We had been through the reorg from hell. Uh, the cards that I had been dealt weren't that great. But hey, I'm a poker player. I will play a crappy hand pretty darn good sometimes. Uh, but it was my perfect storm. If we would have talked 2 weeks before this happened, my plan was, yeah, it's time to move on, and got to do all the usual things. Like I hadn't updated a resume in 8 years. Yeah, way too long. The perfectionist again. Just go in, tweak it, and be done with it. Anyway, and this is an interesting contrast to these times because a few things that were said to me was one was, is a stepmother really an important enough funeral to go to? We got a lot going on here. That was said to me. Um, but one, and if that's not impactful enough, it was, we know you won't leave. Nobody leaves in this environment.
So
Two
we
weeks
can do
later,
whatever we
right?
want, right?
Yeah, yeah. They weren't given. I don't know. It's a long, ugly story, and I don't want to drag it down in negativity. It was what set me free.
Right.
I've never looked back. It was my great resignation, and it's the thing in life I've done early, and I did it 7 years, 6 or 7 years early. My great resignation, didn't see it coming, and it's like, this is what I must do.
Well,
And
I tell the story about, so, I told you how, I'm very successful in business until I wasn't.
mm-hmm, mm,
Okay. And I tell the story of when I got my ass fired,
yeah,
right? And I was in a company I knew day one I shouldn't have been in. It didn't resonate, right? I stayed because of the money. I stayed for whatever. I sucked up
yes.
all of the things I sucked up. I got my ass fired. I was a miserable bitch. I sued their ass back. And then I looked in the mirror one day and I couldn't stand who was looking back.
Yes. Oh yeah.
And I thought, who have I allowed myself to become?
You mentioned the money, and that is one of my favorites because everybody makes it about the money.
And it's had nothing to do with the
And
money.
and the day you can stop making everything in your life about the money, that's a one of the one day of more freedom than you will experience from most anything else in this world.
Right? It's a great excuse. Money, okay, what's holding you back?
The money.
Afraid to lose the money.
I stayed in a job, and it was very
We
similar to
both
what
did.
it, it was good until it wasn't. And then I stayed for another 15 years. Why? Well, I'm making good money. Why another 5 years of making good money and then I'll make the move? Who said I'm going to make less money because I'm not experienced in that other thing?
Right?
Well, it's one of the lies we tell ourselves because it's the money.
Right?
You know,
Right.
it's
I
the
have
reason to
so
be
many
stopped.
clients that come to me, especially in their, late 40s to mid 50s, who are unfulfilled, who are they never followed a dream. They don't even know how to dream.
Mm-hmm.
And they're afraid. I have a nice house, I have good money, we have great vacations, but I feel awful.
Yeah.
I'm dry, I'm dead, right?
Right.
Um,
Yes.
you know, it, some people can do the corporate thing and not like it and survive.
Mm-hmm.
most people it'll dry you up. And I don't want to bash corporate because like I said, I had many fabulous careers, very
Hmm.
fabulous jobs. I left them not because I was unhappy, but I had climbed as far as I was going to climb in
Yeah.
that environment, and I like change.
Hmm.
And I had to leave because I was bored. I was bored, right?
Yes, I know that feeling
Right?
very
Right?
well. Very, very well.
Right.
Yeah.
And so what do you say to your clients who one of the things holding them back is that green back?
Well,
Whoa.
the problem for many is that they are wearing golden handcuffs because of the choices they've made. I was in a position that I could cut the cord and leave, and it took a long time to get there. But fortunately, I heard the right stories and listened to the right people
Hmm.
years and years ago to where I was able to do that. But there are people who they make a move like that, they've got 3 months because of the money. They've got two fancy cars in the driveway and a home that's too big for them. And we could go down the list.
Oh,
Oh,
right. And then the
and
kids
we
are going to
fall.
college, they're going to go to Yale, they're going to go to Harvard, they're going to go to the best,
Right,
right?
right. Yeah, yeah. And so the golden handcuffs. And now
Right.
there are ways out. It's called a key. You may have to make the key to your particular golden handcuffs, and it may take a little bit of time. Or,
And the thing is that you, the story that you tell yourself. So I have a very quick story of um, client slash friend. He's does very well in his business. He's a
mm-hmm,
multimillionaire.
mm-hmm,
And, he and I both belong to a same networking group. And I left the networking group. And shortly after that, he was excused from the networking group.
yeah,
And he and I met and he goes, Gail, that 1.5 million of my business comes from them. I have to figure out how to fill that gap. Right. And in the meantime, he was pursuing a career as a motivational speaker.
okay, mm-hmm,
Right.
mm-hmm,
Well, he and his salesman got together, and guess what? They not only filled that gap, they exceeded that gap in like no time. And guess what? Here we are 12 months later. He has been as a speaker, he has been doing this for about 8 months now,
mm-hmm.
and he said 5 to 6 grand a month on
Mm-hmm.
clients alone, not
Yeah.
counting his speaking, but coaching clients alone.
Oh,
Plus his other business is still
well,
going.
yeah,
So
yeah.
you don't know.
You don't. And you know what? Circling back to what you can and can't do, I took the big sigh and told you the story about the golden handcuffs, but there's the other story. It's like, how about not spending money on all that stuff that A, you don't enjoy, B, you don't need, C, it's just because you want to show off. I mean, we could go down the list. It's like, okay, who says you can't make 30% less for the next 3 years until you catch up? You might find that it's a whole lot better.
You
You
know,
know?
and honestly, if when it comes to being a sole entrepreneur, I've
Yeah.
had years where, 6 figures was simple. Six figures
Mm-hmm.
was simple, and years where, okay, am I going to pay the rent this month, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
um, but it's never have I doubted how happy I am,
Exactly.
right?
Exactly.
Right? And I've always done what I've wanted to do, always.
Yeah.
So
Key
life,
words. Key words there, Gail. What I wanted to do. And there was not a selfish tone in there. And if you think there was, it's really what we need to do. We have choices.
Yep.
You always have a choice, and you should do what you want to do. Now, we could spend all kinds of time about what makes what I want a good thing or a not so good thing,
No, keep going.
but it's why not do what you want to do?
Well,
Because
there's a selfish
yeah,
so versus selfishness, right?
okay,
Um, there is nothing wrong with being selfish, right? You come first. You're on an airline. What do they tell you? When the mask comes
yeah,
down, you first. Then you can help others, right?
mm-hmm.
You first. When you put yourself first, not in a selfish or a selfishness way,
Way,
but in a self-fulfilling way,
yes.
it's a little bit different,
Being
right?
the best you is the best thing you can do for the others in your life.
Right?
You think they like the grumpy, bitchy old burned out person who just can't stand their job
I know
because
why didn't like me.
I didn't like me.
Right? Right.
Right,
And so and I have this line that I use with clients. If your choice is fulfilling you
right.
and is ergonomic, which means it's not harming
Make,
someone else or the universe,
yeah,
then there's nothing wrong with the choice. Now, if the choice is harming others, now you need to reconsider why
that's
you're making that choice,
yeah,
right?
right, right.
And if it takes 2 seconds to sit down and ask yourself that question,
Mhm. Yeah,
right? Right. And so
very.
yes, Jeff, I could go on and on and on with you. You and I know we could probably talk forever,
I
but
think so.
so I think we can wrap this up. But I want to get back to, Jeff. He's a personal growth and development coach. He's a writer. He's a blogger. He talked about some of that stuff.
Yeah.
He lives in Santa Fe with his wife, Lynette. And he's pretty cool. And he's got a dog, a quirky dog named Brody. Is it
Brody.
Brody? And Jeff, let us know where we can find you.
So, the best place for coaching is jeffmeister.net. And if you care to take a look at my blog, Life Untucked, it's about just taking a step back and focusing on what matters most. That's at lifeuntucked.net and/or .com.
And I will have the stuff obviously in the write-up. Jeff, thank you very much for spending time with me on this
Absolutely.
discussion. This has been so much fun. And folks, this is Gail Kraft from the Empowering Process podcast. And if this resonated with you, please share it out, like it, leave us a comment. And if this brought something up for you that you would like us to talk about even more, make a comment. We'll get back together and we'll dig deeper into what it is that resonates with you. In the meantime, thank you, everybody. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Empowering Process podcast. Be sure to visit Gail at gailcraft.com to learn more about how she serves thought leaders, entrepreneurs, and goal seekers. And remember, if you like this broadcast, be sure to share and subscribe so you don't miss an episode.